Hello everyone, and welcome to the advanced Flutter MVVM with provider, Riverpod, and BLoC state management. I'm Hadi Kashmar, and I'll be guiding you through this journey where we will explore and master Flutter with MVVM and different state managements. Let me give you a bit of information about myself. First of all, I hold 2 master's degrees. The first master is in computer and communication engineering, and the second master degree is in data engineering and artificial intelligence. In the past few years, I was teaching here on Udemy and on YouTube, where some of you already know me, where I have 5 stars rated courses here on Udemy. I strongly recommend you to check it out. Then, of course, I have professional experience in mobile development using native platforms such as Java and XML, and using Flutter also to develop web and mobile applications and even desktop application with embedded systems. Of course, since I have another master's degree in AI, I have also professional experience in artificial intelligence. Now, this course is designed to take you from a basic level of Flutter, of understanding Flutter, to an expert level. It will equip you with the knowledge and skills to build maintainable and scalable mobile application, web application, or any application using Flutter with the MVVM architecture and different state management techniques such as provider, Riverpod, even the BLoC state management. So whether you're looking to advance in your career, kickstart a new one, or simply deepen your understanding of state managements and architectural pattern in Flutter, you have come to the right place. So throughout this course, I'll be here to help you succeed, providing clear explanation, multiple quizzes, practical examples, and answering your questions. So feel free to reach me at any time that you need, and I'll be happy to help you throughout this journey. So let's get started this journey, and happy learning for you. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, it will be actually a very small lecture. I just want to tell you that at the first few days of each month, I try to publish sale coupons so that you can get the course for the best price. You don't have to wait until that you have sale on Udemy for all courses. You can just use this coupon and you will get the course using with the best price. So what you need to do is just join the Discord. You don't have to install the application. You can even use it from the browser. Create an account, log in, join the link that you will have attached to this lecture, and then you will land over this page. So as you can see, for September, for example, I added in here the coupons for all my courses that you can register in. So you can use this coupon, for example, or you can directly use the link for any course that you are interested in. So as you can see, every month I try to publish the sale coupons. Okay, so you can use these coupons in order to get the course for the best price, as I mentioned. So that's it. See you very soon in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, let me explain to you how our application works exactly. So as you might know, we implemented our application using different state managements. We used the set state, we used the provider, we used the Riverpod, and we used the BLoC. So every time we use a different state management to implement the same functionalities for the application so that you have a really better understanding and you will be able to implement any application after finishing this course using any state management of your choice that is covered in this course. And of course, we use the MVVM architecture in order to implement our application. So I strongly assure you that after finishing this course, you will have a very strong knowledge in the state management and also in the MVVM architecture. So let's get started and let me explain to you how our application works. But first, if you're thinking that you can skip any section, for example, if you wanna watch the Riverpod you can do that. So the way I explained this course, I started with the set state, then I started with the provider, then Riverpod, then the BLoC state management. Now, the provider is compared to the set state management. Then we implemented also the Riverpod, and while I implemented the Riverpod, I compared it to the provider. So for that reason, I strongly recommend you to watch the sections sequentially, so to watch it in order. And the same thing, the BLoC, I compared it also to the Riverpod and the provider because we already implemented it. So by this way, you will have a very strong understanding of what we explain. And so this is why I strongly recommend you to watch the courses or sections in order. Do not skip any section. The section time is small, it's around 2 hours. If you have a feeling that you really understand what is state management or you understand the specific state management, feel free to watch it on double speed, for example, but do not skip it. Okay, this is a recommendation, and I strongly recommend you to follow what I'm saying. Now let's get started, and let me explain to you how our application works exactly. So this is the main screen and our application. However, let me close it and then let me open it again and focus very well. So here you will have the splash screen, as you can see. So you have a loading indicator and you will have the text showing or saying that it is loading. So in this splash screen, we were fetching the different genres for each movie that you can see in here. We already also fetched some movies, so we can directly display it for the user. And you will see later on in the course how we implemented it in different state managements. So as you can see in here, we implemented different themes. We implemented dark and light theme, and the way that I used, you can extend it as many themes as what you want. If you want to add a third theme, for example, you will be able to do that easily. And we implemented different functionalities. For example, if I press here, I can add it to my favorites. So if I go here to the favorite screen, I can see it in here, as you can see. If I press on this button again, it will be removed. And when we don't have anything in our data or in our favorites, we will show or display this screen in here. Now, if I come back and let's add multiple items, let's change it to the dark theme. And here, let's see, we have the 3 different items that I just added. And if I press on this button in here, I can remove or delete all of them from my favorites. Now let's come back and let's use the light theme because I prefer it. And in here, for example, let's go to this movie, and in here you can see the details. As you can see, the design is really, really beautiful in here, especially with this button on top of the other widgets. And I really use this design in order to show you advanced way also in design, not only focus on the state management. I also showed you different ways in order to reduce the code and different tips and tricks to use the code and make it more scalable. And whenever you have a bug, for example, or a new feature to be added, you will see that it's very, very easy to add it or to catch a bug using this architecture and the way that I used in the code. And by the way, this widget that is used in here, it is the same widget used in here and in different widgets in here, for example. And same thing goes here, same thing for the genres and so on. We make the code in a very, very dynamic way, and we shorten it as much as possible to make it more scalable and easy to fix and maintain. And we separated the logic from the UI. As you can see, the application UI is very beautiful, and it might be or look a small application. However, it's not. It's really complicated, and we covered really, really advanced topics that you will use it in advanced application. And after finishing this course, you will be an expert in Flutter with no doubt. We're not done yet. There is a very important feature that is covered also in this course, which is the pagination, which you might use it in most of the application that you will develop. It's a very, very important feature, and the way we implemented it. Now, when I scroll down, I will fetch more and more items. As you can see here, we had this circular progress indicator. Now I use the adaptive circular progress indicator, but in here I use the Android one in order to display it clearly for you. Now let's scroll more and more, and you will see that we will fetch more items every time I reach the bottom. So that's it. As you can see, I'm fetching more items when I'm reaching the bottom. Okay, so this was for this tutorial. If you have any question, I'll be very happy to help you, and I'll try my best to be very active. So I try my best to help you, and willing to share my knowledge with you. Thank you for attending, and see you very soon in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I'll tell you how you can get the most of this course and what will we cover in this course. This is a very important lecture, so please do not skip it. So as you may know, we will implement an application using the MVVM architecture using different state managements such as the Riverpod, BLoC, and the provider. Later on, I might add different state managements, depends on your requests. And this is the application that we will be building, and I added another tutorial regarding this to explain the app functionalities in details. Now, how to get the most of this course? There are different ways. Let me open to you how the course will look like when you purchase this course. So you will have different sections. The first step, what you need to do is to have a look on the section names in here. Now, when I explain, some of you like to write the code with me or type the code with me while I'm explaining. You can do that whatever way that you prefer. For me, my preferred way is to attend the lecture, then take the resources and use these resources and read it and try to understand it, then implement the things by myself. But of course, use the best way that you think it is the best for you. But for me, this is the best way. So if you want to use it, you're welcome. Then, to each lecture, you will have an attached lecture, mostly for the code. For example, in here, for example, there are some presentations that I explained it to you, and you will have also access to these presentations. So you can download it and keep it as a reference for you. Then let's get started and let's download this file from the resources in here. So let's press on this one. And now it has been downloaded. Let's open the files. Got opened here. So let's extract it. As you can see, it is .zip file. And let me do this actually. Okay. So as you can see, this is a Flutter project. So for each lecture, you have the attached code for it. So every code that I explain, you will have it attached to this lecture. Okay, so you can use it at the end of each lecture. So here you have the lib, you have all the files. What you can do, you can take the whole file as it is, and you can open it in Visual Studio Code or Android Studio or whatever IDE that you are using, and then you can open it in it. Now let's open it in Visual Studio Code. So I'll open it and show it to you. Okay, so I opened Visual Studio Code. I have it in here, and I'll just open a new Windows actually for the Visual Studio Code. And I'll close this one. So here I am in a new window of the Visual Studio Code. So let's drag and drop our file that we just unzip it in here, so that we just extracted, and let's close this one. And here you have the code for the current lecture. And if you run it, you will be able to run it, and you can use this file as a reference. Actually, you can use this project as a reference. So if you are typing the code with me, you can, let's say, for example, you are typing the main file. So let's say you are typing with me this file or this widget file, let's say. So if you are typing with me this widget file and you make an error or mistake, you can download this project and compare your project to this one, or you can directly take this code and place it in your code directly. And this is, of course, will work in a perfect way. And I think this is the best way in order to make you understand the things better and better. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope that it was beneficial for you. Thank you for attending. See you in the next one. So the question that you might ask in yourself is, what will I learn by taking this course? Will it really be beneficial for me? Will it increase my Flutter skills? The answer, it depends, of course, on your level. In this course, what we will cover is using the MVVM architecture with different state management. So what we did is to implement the same application, which is a movies application with different functionalities such as a light, dark theme, fetching the movies, fetching genres, using different APIs, and also adding to the favorites and checking the movies details. So there are multiple functionalities in the applications, and some of them are really advanced functionalities that it's very important to understand to be able to develop advanced applications. And I promise you, by finishing this course, you will be able to really develop advanced applications in a very efficient and clean way, that it will help you to write or type a scalable code that is easy to maintain, fixing bugs and adding new features. So here I am in the course structure. So here is the structure that I used for our course. So first of all, I explained what is MVVM. I wanted you to understand perfectly what is MVVM. Then we created a project using the MVVM architecture. Then we implemented the UI for our application, and I used some advanced UI, as you will see later on in our application demonstration. Then I showed you how we can use MVVM in order to navigate in a very clean and efficient way without even relying on the context and using the navigator itself. So you will see we used a very efficient way, and we separated the logic from the UI in a very, very good way. And everything, of course, is clearly explained. Then I explained to you about the MoviesDB API. This is the API that we will need to use. I explained to you how we can create an account, get the API keys. I did a tour about the movies documentation, this movies API documentation, so that I make sure that you understand everything in details. Then I used the very basic state management, and I showed you why it's not scalable at all. I used the set state management. However, I also showed you how it is using the MVVM architecture. We were able to do a lot of things that it was impossible to do without using. What I mean is, we created using the set state management a lot of things that it was impossible to be implemented using or without using MVVM architecture. And you will see why and how we did that when you attend this lecture. Then, after finishing the set state management, we will use this starter code in order to use it for different state management such as provider, BLoC, and Riverpod. And as you can see, for each section, here we have the provider state management using the MVVM, of course. Same for the Riverpod, same for the BLoC, also using the MVVM architecture. At the end, I'll add a conclusion, and I'm planning to add a small section to add some general explanations, such as how to add a Flutter native splash screen or launcher icon, for example, and these kind of things. And one final thing before that I end this lecture. To get started in the course, what I recommend you is to not to get the final code from GitHub. I strongly recommend you to create a new project, and you will have access to the attached lectures, then the final code on GitHub. You can use these codes from GitHub directly when you reach the current section. So do not directly use the files on GitHub. Create a new project and use the attached resources as I showed you in this section how you can use it. It's a very important section, so do not skip it. That's it for this lecture, and see you on the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial, let me give you some hints about Udemy itself and about the course in general. This is one of the most important lectures in this course. Please do not skip it. This is a really important lecture that it will make your learning much more easier, and it will be small. So please do not skip it. If you want to skip it, just watch it on double speed, but don't skip it. So let's get started. First thing, before that you buy a course on Udemy, what you need to do is to check the description. If you are lazy and you don't want to get or know the description, you don't want to read it, what you can do is to have a look on the subtitle and the title first of all, which are found in here. Then what you can do is to have a general look on the section names and lecture names. This is a very important step so that you can understand what this course cover in general. So in our case, first of all, we had a section on the MVVM and depth. So this is where I explain to you what is MVVM and details, and we created a project structure using the MVVM and so on. Then we created our UI. Then we used the MVVM in order to navigate between our application, and this is a very advanced topic that is, it will cover a lot of things, for example. So these things are interesting for you in order to know, and I strongly recommend you to do these steps before that you buy this course. As you can see, we have different sections, so if you have a look about it, it will give you a general insights about this course and what we cover in this course. Now, when you are attending this course, Udemy will ask you to give feedback. If you feel ready to give a feedback, please give it and be honest with your feedbacks. This will help me. And if you like this course, please share 5 stars rating feedback so that you will motivate me. And if you have a feedback, please share it with me so that I improve this course or I improve future courses. I always take your feedback in a very positive way. So as I mentioned, there is a button when they ask you to give a feedback. If you're not ready, you can press on a button to give a feedback later on in the course. So you can give a feedback at the end of this course, for example. Now, let me go very fast about these tools in here and the tools that we have in this video. First of all, if you feel that I'm speaking fast, you can change the speed in here. And if you feel that I'm speaking slow, you can change the speed also in here, as you can see. Then, if you have a note to take, for example, if I'm telling you something very important and you want to take notes, you can add a note in here and you will have access. You will know actually at which time exactly you took this note and which lecture. So every time you want to revise or do a revision, you can come back to your notes, and this is something very important from Udemy and really cool actually. So now let me continue in here. In here you will have, as you can see, the maximum resolution of the video is 1080p. Unfortunately, I cannot share more. I was recording on 2K monitor, but I cannot share more than full HD. And if your device is not supporting, if your screen is maximum of 720p, of course you cannot watch the course on 1080p, and it also depends on your internet connection. So please make sure to that, but all the lectures that I upload are 1080p. Okay? Now, let's proceed with these tabs in here. So we have tab for questions and answers. So before that you ask any question, what I recommend you to not wait for my answer. You can search other asked question. So let me go to this tab in here. So this is another course that I published last year, and I updated it this year. So in this course, for example, let's say you have a question. So what you can do, come to this tab, you can search a question, a keyword that it is in your mind, for example, and in here, you have, as you can see, different questions in here, and you will have a similar question just like others. So you can come here and you can search for this question and you might find the answer. And as you can see, all asked questions have answers. I try my best to answer everything in order to make it clear and to help you as much as I can. And as I said, you can search by keyword in here, or you can sort in here. Now let's come back to our course. Here we talked about the notes that you can take at a specific time in here. Sometimes I do some announcements, for example. You can check the announcements, like if I add a new lecture, I will do an announcement. If we have a new course, I will add an announcement, and so on. the reviews I talked about. So if you feel ready to give a review, please give it. And I really appreciate that you give a review, an honest review. So regarding the learning tools, this is if you wanna set a calendar or for your time, the best time for you in order to learn. This is like a reminder for you in order to learn, to make you remember to learn about this course. Okay, so this is in general, and I hope that you reach the end of this lecture, because I want to mention also that here, as you can see, to each lecture you will have attached resources. So for example, here I used a presentation, so I attached this presentation for you also. And in here, when we started with the code, you will have zip files that you can use in your application, always. Now, regarding the zip file, I will use a separated or create a separated lecture for it in order to show you how you can use these .zip files that you can directly use in your application. However, if you are coding with me, what you can do, you can use these zip files in order to compare it directly to your written files. And if you have a bug or something, you can always use these files as a reference. Of course, the source code is found also on GitHub, but these lectures, I find it myself, when I learned something on Udemy, for example, I find it really useful that I have the resources like this in here. Okay, so this is why you will have it always. You will have some links also, like this case. So always check the resources for each lecture. It's very, very important. This is it for this tutorial. I know I talked a lot, but this is a very, very important lecture. And that's it. See you very soon in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I want to talk about the source code that you can find on GitHub. Now, in order to get started with this course, what I recommend you to do is to create your own project first, then use the attached resources as I explained to you. So create a new Flutter project, as I showed you how you can create a Flutter project. Then you can use the attached files, or you can type the code with me. Okay, do not directly download the full source code from GitHub. By this way, you will not learn. Just use the attached lectures, and once you finish a section, you can find the attached code on GitHub, as I will explain right now. So here I am in the repository, and for now it is a private repository because I didn't publish the course yet. However, it will be available for everyone when I publish this course. So when you visit this page, you will land over this branch. At the moment, you will land at this branch, which is the set state MVVM final code. So from its name, you will understand that this is the final code from the state management, from the set state management using the MVVM architecture. So once you finish the set state section, so let's say I visit this page in here, and in here I am in the set state management section. So once I finish this section, I can go to the GitHub and I can get this source code, which is the set state MVVM final code. Now, if you scroll a bit, you will have this README, and you will have a bit of explanation, and all of this covered in this course, and you will have the course description also. Now, when you land on this page, you will have also the final code for the Riverpod if you press on these links, for example, to make it easier for you. However, you can just press on this one and you can choose the branch that you are interested in. So the codes that I added the final code for the Riverpod, I added the final code for the provider, the final code for the BLoC. Now, in order to get started with every state management, what I did is to use the same starter code for all of them. So this is why I added this starter code, that you can use it for different state managements. And this is covered clearly in the course, and I added a separated section in here for it, and you will have it also as resources in here, which is the same code from GitHub. So you can get it also from GitHub in here, okay? So you can get it like this, you can download it, clone it, whatever you prefer, okay? So I added different lectures in order to show you how you can use the attached resources. So if you want to use these resources, you just need to download it, unzip it. It means extracted. Then you can open it in Visual Studio Code, IntelliJ, or Android Studio, or any IDE that you prefer. Then you can run the application or use any file that you need in your project. So that's it for this lecture. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. I'll be very happy to help you. Thank you for attending. See you very soon. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. So in this lecture, I'll talk to you about the MVVM, which stands for the Model View Model. So I would assume that you already heard about it, and maybe once you hear about this name, you will think, what is this about? And you might be nervous and maybe a bit afraid of learning, and you will think that this might be something that's hard to understand. But believe me, no, it's something very easy to understand, and it will make your life much more easier. And you will see throughout this tutorial, which I hope that you don't skip, you will see that it will really make your life easier, and you will see how it works and how it segments your code and make your life much more easier. I insisted on this word because it really make your work much more organized, and it helps you to organize your code. And later on, if you have a bug to fix or if you have a new feature to add, it will be much more easier. And even if you want to integrate a new person in your project, it will be much more simpler to explain to him rather than not following an architecture. Of course, you heard about the state management. You might already, maybe you already master some of them, and you might not be already using a clear architecture. Of course, there are multiple architectures with the Flutter, such as presentation clear architecture, or even this architecture, MVC architecture, and so on. In this course, I will focus on the MVVM architecture, and in my opinion, it is the best, and it works for almost all the projects. I said almost all the projects, not all of them. So be careful about this. You need to think well on what architecture you need to use in your project. So be careful about this point. And enough talking, let's get started. So here I created a diagram in order to explain how the components are connected together. So of course, from its name, we have the view, then we have the view model, then we have the model. The view, from its name, it is the UI. The view model, we will talk about it very, very soon in the next lecture. In the next slide. And then the model is where we get our data. So how the flow is organized together is that the view will request, the view, we will have an event. The user will press on something to get data, for example, or to update the UI. The view model will get notified. Then once the view model is notified, he will need to request the data from the model. The model, if he has the data, it will return it to the view model. If not, we might get an error, for example. And if we have an error, of course, it will tell also the view model. Then when the view model gets a response or gets an error, what happens is that we update the UI and we show it to the user on the screen. Now let's go deeper inside of this architecture. So as I said, we have the view model, and repository. The view is the Flutter widget, for example. You can consider it as this case. The view model is the state management, such as the provider, Riverpod, BLoC, GetX, MobX, Redux, whatever. Then we have the model itself. The model itself, as I mentioned, it is the repository which are, for example, let's say local database or a remote data source, for example, such as an API. So what happened in here is that the repository will request the data, then the local database or the API service or the API itself, it will return the data, or it will give or throw an error. And we will know, of course. So let's go higher and start to, or try to understand how this architecture works exactly. So we are on the view level in here. So we are on our Flutter UI widget. So I added this screen in here, and let's say we have a button called fetch data. Now, of course, this is not how our application works. and I added a lecture for you explaining how our application works. Of course, we will get the information directly when the user opens up the application. But this is just an example. Keep this in your mind. Now, the first step is that the user will press on the fetch data button, let's say. Then once the user does this, we need to update or notify the view model. Now, the view model by himself, what he will do, first step is that it will update the UI. We will show a progress indicator, let's say, instead of the button. Then what happens is that it requests something from the repository. So it requests the data from the repository. Then the third step is that the repository itself, it requests the data from the local database or even from the API. And then we will get the response, which can be an error, as I mentioned. Now, the fourth step is that the view model, it will update its state and the UI will change afterwards. So the fifth step is that here we show the UI on the screen once the state is updated. So once the state is updated, we will go back to the view, and we will tell the view, hey, update your UI. We have got the new data. We need to display it on the screen for the user. And we show it directly for the user in here like this. So what happened in here is that the first step, the user press on the fetch data, then the view model show a progress indicator and it will request the data. Once it gets back the data, it will tell the view, then it will tell also or update the UI. So this is pretty much as a global state management. However, we are talking here about the files or how we separate or we should separate our files in order to create a really scalable project that we can maintain it at any period of time and any new person can work on it easily without suffering. Okay, so you don't have to write everything in the same project. This is the best way in order to do it. This is why when you learn something, if you are familiar with native platforms, this is why most of them, they directly teach you or they directly talk to you about the MVVM architecture, because this is the default architecture, which is really, really recommended and maintainable. I know I talked a lot, but this is a really important lecture and I hope that you didn't skip it and you arrived until the end. Throughout this course, we don't talk theory a lot. It's full of practice, so you will have a lot of practice to do with me and you will understand the things perfectly. And if you have any question, I will say, please feel free to ask. I would really be glad in order to help you. Okay? Thank you a lot for attending. See you soon in the next one. Hi, in this lecture, I'll just show you how you can create a Flutter project. Even if you know, please make sure to not skip this lecture. So for that, I'll open up the terminal. Then I'll navigate to the location where I want my projects to be. Of course, if you're using Android Studio, you can create the project using the UI of Android Studio. But in my case, I'm using the terminal and I will use the Visual Studio Code to explain to you during this course. And I think most of you prefer the Visual Studio Code, so this is why. Now we drag this folder, which I want to be in this location. And by the way, the CD means here, I want to navigate to this location. So now I press enter and now I'm here in the location where I want to create my project. Here we type Flutter create and the name of your project. Now when we create a Flutter project, if you know, we will land on an application which is the counter application. And normally this is a boilerplate code that you do not need usually. And even in the pubspec.yaml file, you will have a lot of comments. So you might not need it. And if you don't want these, you add your project name. Let's say project name, and here you add -e. But in my case, I'll keep these comments just to make sure that it might be easier actually for some of you. So in my case, I'll name the project as MVVM state management, because we will cover different state managements in this course. Now I press enter Now, if I go here it is. This is the project I just created. What you can do is to open the Visual Studio Code, and now Visual Studio Code has been opened. We can drag our folder that we just created, and now here it is. As I said, if you add the -e flag, all of these comments will not be here anymore. But in my case, I'll just keep it, okay? So that's it for this tutorial. And the next tutorial, let's add the packages that we need in our course and remove this boilerplate code. That's it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one. Hi everyone and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, let's do in our code the MVVM architecture. So what I mean is to create the project structure. I explained it to you before using diagram, but now we will do it in the course. We will do it in the code. And of course, now you will have a very better understanding than the previous one, because now we will do the practical one instead of just theoretical talk. If you're lazy enough and you don't want to create it manually, you can just look for some libraries here. If you type MVVM, there is this package, for example, that you can use. However, I strongly recommend you to follow these same steps as me, and I'll explain everything in details. And by the end of this lecture, you will have a very strong understanding of how you need to structure your project. Now, if you remember, in the MVVM, we have the model, then the view model, then the view. So regarding the view, you can create a folder, for example, named view, and inside of this folder, you can create another folder named screens and another folder for the global widgets, for example. You can follow these steps as you wish. You can separate the UI as what you like. However, for me, the thing I prefer, even if I have a very huge project, I normally create screens folder, then I create a new folder. I name this folder widgets. Now, if I have a feature that it contains multiple widgets, I create a new folder inside the widgets. And for example, in our case, we have the movies, for example, and I can create a new folder named movies. And this folder, it will hold all of our widgets for the movies. So for example, widget, let's say movie underscore widget 1.dart, and we will have multiple options. For example, this one will be movie widget 2, and so on. You can do this structure, and I strongly recommend you to do the same way. And the same thing goes for the screens. Now I'll just delete these two. We don't really need it for now. Now we need to create the view model. The view model is actually the provider or the BLoC or, for example, the Riverpod. So in my case, I'll just create a new folder named provider or notifiers, for example, or you can even name it view models. Okay, so actually, to make it clear for you, I'll just say view model like this. Okay. Now we need to create a folder for the repository, and don't worry if it is not clear for now. I'm just talking about the structure of our project. So here a folder called repository, then we need a service, and this service will deal with our API. Okay, so we will have a service to deal with the API, and then using the repository we will do the JSON serialization. Then we use the repository in our UI. Don't worry if it's not clear for you yet. Now we are just doing the structure as I mentioned. So do not worry. Now focus on the structure and everything will become very clear for you later in the course. Now let's create this folder named service. We can create another folder now for us. It's not really related now to the MVVM. However, to make your work easier. So I'll create something called utils, and these utils, we will use it, for example, for global methods, some methods that are specific for a certain widget in order to to be able to use it in multiple places and in order to make our life easier. And I have a good example in our project to show you how we use the utils folder. So don't worry about it, it will become clearer later on. Now, let me actually delete this, we don't really need it. We can create a new folder named constant. And this constant one, if you have, for example, you want to add icons, you can create something called my app icons in order to organize all your icons in your application. So you can add it here. We can create here a class called my app icons like this. And then if you have an icon that you want to use, you can define it like this, icon data, let's say favorite, and we can choose icons.favorites, for example, like this. Now I will have all my icons in this class in here. And this is strongly recommended in order to separate, to know actually which icons are you using. Same thing goes for the assets and so on. We will have another one for the API constant, but we will create it later on. Of course, now we need to create the model folder in order to do to create the for later on. We need to have a movies model and a genre model and so on. This will become clearer for you in the REST API section. Again, do not worry about it. So let's say here models. Now we have it, and that's it. So here in the structure, we have the constants. This is not included in the MVVM architecture, but it makes our life easier and how we separate our code. So we do the minimal changes as what we need. Okay, so that's it for this structure. You will find the code attached to this lecture. So if you didn't create it yourself, you can use directly the code. And that's it for this lecture. In the next lecture, let's add the packages that we will use in our project. That's it. See you on the next one. In this lecture, let's add the packages that we will use in our application. Of course, later on, we will add different packages for the state management. But for now, we will use we will add the libraries that we will use it in each project. So we will have actually 4 different projects later on. One for the set state management, one for the provider, another one for the Riverpod, and lastly, another one for the BLoC. Now, if I get more requests in order to add other state management, such as GetX or Redux or MobX, for example, I'll do it. I might add the separated lectures, but for now, let's add the common packages that we will use for now. So we don't have to keep every time adding different packages, so that when we finish the UI with the API integration, we can use this basic project for each different state management. Okay, so in order to do that, I assume that you know that we need to go to the pub.dev and then we need to search for some packages. The first package that I really like is the cached network image. This library, if we have an image that is already fetched, it will be cached. And this is very efficient and it will make our application much more faster, and it will save the user mobile data. The second one is the getit. Regarding this package, if you don't really know it, do not worry about it now. We will talk about it later on in details. Then we will have this one, which is the flutter.env. Again, if you don't know it, don't worry about it, but here a short explanation about it. So if you want to secure your API keys and your environment, you can use this package in order to do that. Now, we have the shared preference. The shared preference saves some things on the user mobile or user browser, for example, and we will need it mostly to save the theme state, to know if it's dark mode or light mode or any different theme, for example. So we will use this shared preference in order to save the user mobile settings, let's say. Finally, we will use the HTTP package. You don't really have to add this package since it's added to the new Flutter now, let's say. but I recommend you to add it to have the latest update. Now, what we can do is to copy this one, go back to the pubspec.yaml file, paste it here. And the reason why I want to copy all of these to show you that, and I strongly recommend you to use the same versions as me. Now, I don't think that these packages have major updates, but you can use the same versions as me to not have any problem later on. So imagine even when I was using Flutter in 2019, since now the sharded preference, it didn't really change much the code about it and so on, so everything is the same. Now let's add it again here below this Cupertino icons, and let's add the .env like this. Then let's add the getIt like this, and finally let's add the cached network image like this. Now if you press Command S if you're on on MacBook, or Control S if you're on Windows, or you press this package normally. Now it is running, and it seems that all good. But since we added multiple packages, what I recommend you to do is to run Flutter clean. Then you type Flutter packages get. All good. Now we can run our application. So I'll run the application and I will resume the video once it is done. Well, actually, during this time, what I'm gonna do is to remove this like this, and let's remove this code actually, which is for the counter code. And in here, in the screens, let's allow it. And here, let's create a screen called movies_screen.dart. Here, actually, we can create a stateless widget. We can name it movies screen like this. Here, let's add a scaffold. Let's add the body. And the body, let's add a center. Let's say text, hello world, like this. That's it. Let's copy this, come back to the main, use it here, import this like this, and that's it. Now restart the application and come back to our simulator here, and that's it. Here we have the hello world coming from the movies screen. That's it for this lecture. And the next lecture, let's start implementing the movies screen. Thank you, and see you on the next one. Hi, in this lecture, instead of proceeding implementing this movies screen, what I want to do is to actually create the theme data. So what we can do is to copy this, go to the constants, and create a new file that will hold our theme data parameters, let's say. Of course, you can create another class. Let's name it, for example, my app colors.dart, and in here you will have a class, let's say my app colors, and here it will hold the colors that you like. For example, let's say static color, let's say red color like this, and it will be equal to the colors.red. And in here we need to add the const keyword because it's constant. Then we need to import the Dart material. Now if you want to add something like this, you can define your app theme, your app colors for each theme in here. For example, you might have different themes in your application, so you can create one for the dark theme, another one for the light theme, let's say, and so on. Okay, so in my case, I'll just comment this because I do not really need it. I don't use really sophisticated theme for our application. It's very basic. So I'll create a new file and I will name this file theme underscore data.dart, and let's say actually my app theme like this to keep the convention. So let's create a class. Let's name it my theme data like this, and I can actually paste this one here. And similarly of what we did here, we create something like this. I'll copy this, come back here, then add it here, put it equal. And now we need to import the material package. It's not const here, it is final, like this. And of course, this is the type is actually theme data. As I said, it's not const, it is final here, okay? So now we will have one for the light theme and another one for the dark theme. So in the light theme, I'll do it like this. And in here, actually, I'll remove these. And here you have built-in dark and light theme inside your application directly. So in here, I'll choose the light one. You can keep it like this, or you can customize it if you like. So if you want to customize it, you add here .copy with, and then here you define whatever you want. For example, let's say I want to change the app bar theme, and in order to do that, I add the app bar theme here, and then we call the app bar theme like this, and then I choose the background color, and I will use the white one like this. And then for the foreground, I'll use the colors.black actually. Then we can define the elevation. I'll use 1. That's it. You can define if you want the color scheme. In my case, I'll use the color scheme. Let's use the light one directly. So you have it here like this. And I'll just change the background color like this, but I found out the background color is deprecated now, so I'll just use the surface as they asked us to do. So if I hover on it, it says that this one is deprecated, use surface instead. So here, let's use the surface one, and the color that I will use is something like this. I like this color, so I'll just use this color like this. Now this is the light theme. In my case, I want to add the other one for the dark theme also. So let's do it. So I'll copy and just paste it here like this. Okay, now in order to use this light theme, of course, now we cannot directly implement the theme. Later on, we will implement it with different state managements. We will use the provider, then the Riverpod, then the BLoC state management. So you will have the code to change the theme with different state managements also. So here, let's go to the main, and instead of this, we can use our class, the my app theme, something like this. What did we name it? My theme data, sorry. Okay, so let's use it here, import it. Now let's use the light theme. Now restart the application. Let's see if there will be any difference. Okay, there are no difference. Let's see the dark theme, save, that's it. As you can see, it is working just fine. I'll just keep the light theme for now. It might be better. And let's actually remove the debug banner. Let's put it to false. So I remove this debug banner here. And then let's actually also change this title. Let's say movies app, like this. Okay, so that's it in this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we will implement the movies screen. And if you get bored, don't worry, I'll implement the code and then explain each line for you and try to play around with it to show you each widget and how we use it. Okay? Thank you for watching. See you on the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, let's start implementing the movies screen, which will look something similar to this one. It will look the same actually. So for that, let's get started. Here we have the app bar, we have the title, we have 2 buttons here. Then here we have a list view, and this list view, it looks something like this. So let's try to understand this. Here we have an image, then we have a row here, also a row with the image. Here we have the title, we have the rating, then here we have some kind of widget. I'll explain it to you, this one. Then here we have an icon with the date, and here we have this button to add to our favorites. Okay, so let's get started. For that, let's get back to our application here, and in here let's create the app bar. And the app bar, as I said, to be like this. Let's remove the constant keyword from here. So for this app bar, it will take a title. So for the title, it will be something like this. Then we will have the action buttons. So here we have actions. Then let's create an icon button like this. And for the icon, for the first one, I'll use the favorite icon like this. So for this one, we can also add it to the My App icons. So I can add it like this. And then let's change the name like this. And now this one, it can be used by calling the class like this, of course. Of course, not here. I'll just add it here to copy. Then come back to our movie screen, and here I use it like this. And it's constant actually, so we can keep it like this. Okay, so now I'm organizing all my icons inside of this class. Okay, very good. Now I added red color to it. Let's save. Here I have the title, here I have this button. Now we will have another button, so we can copy this and then paste it, and the other button will have it will be for the theme. So I will use here the dark mode. So if I save it, here I have the dark mode, but we don't have to add the colors to it. Now this one also, let's add it here in this class, like this. And now let's come back to the movie screen and let's use our class. Just like this. Perfect. Now we finished the app bar. Of course, if you want the title in the center, you can add something here called center title, or you can just edit it from here. You can add the center title flag or parameters from here, okay? Now, in here for the body, we have a list view. So in order to create a list view, you can use list view dot builder actually. So this widget is kind of specific. If you don't know, this widget only render what we see on the screen. So if we have 10 items shown on the screen, we only render these 10 items. And when I scroll more, it render the next items. And if I scroll up again, it will render again the items that are on top. So it only renders the items that we see on the screen. Okay, and this is very efficient, and it makes your application smoother, of course. Okay. Of course, you need to use the list view scroll in order to benefit from this. So if you wrap it with single child scroll view, then you use expanded, then you are using the single child scroll view. You are not using the list view builder anymore. I hope that this is clear for you. I'm trying to give you the most of this course, so I hope that this can be beneficial for you. Now let's give it the context here for the builder, and let's give it the index, and here we can return a widget. So, and for now, I'll just return a text, and let's say in here, text, and we can add the index like this. If I save, here I have it. I have unlimited number of texts. Why unlimited number? Because I didn't add the item builder here. The item count. The item count, we can put it to 10. Here we have 10 items, okay? If you want to start from 1, for example, here it is like this. Before that, I end this lecture here because I'm trying to make maximum 10 minutes lecture. What I'm planning to do is to create a widget, a global widget actually, for this image in here. So this image, we are using the cached network image. Okay, so let's get back to our application, and to do so, we can create here a new widget, and we can name it cached network image. So I'll just name it here cached image.dart, and in here it will be a stateless widget, and in here let's say cached image widget, like this. Great. So now what we can do here, we will use of course the cached network image. So let's look for it. Now let's try to import it, and it didn't appear actually. So what I'm gonna do is to add the package import here, remove this const keyword, and now it takes some required arguments such as the image URL. So let's give it this image URL like this, and for this image URL I'm gonna use an image that I uploaded to my profile, which is this image for the Fight Club movie. It's a good movie, you should watch it. Now let's use actually this cached image here instead of this text. Let's save, and here it is, as you can see. Now if I wrap this one by padding, here it is. Now we have I think 10 items because we have the item count set to 10. Okay, so as you can see, when we fetched the first image, all of these images are fetched also. While I mentioned to you that the list view builder, it only fetched what we see on the screen. So in this case, it only fetched this screen and this screen only. I mean this view here and this view only. Perfect. So this cached network image, it will take some parameters. It will take actually the image URL, and we can give it the box fit, for example, to see how it will look. For example, let's say here fit, and here box fit dot fill, for example. By default, it seems that it's filled. I'll use contain, for example. Save, didn't change. Cover, it also didn't change. But if we change the height and width, let's put, for example, 50 for the height, and now it looks like this. Now if you use fill, as you can see, it tries to fill it like this. So try to play with this by your own. In my case, I like the cover and so on. Now, it would be better, since this cached image, we will use it in our entire application. So if you have a huge application, this widget, it will be a global widget that you will use it in your entire application. So the height, the width, the image URL, all of these features or parameters, you need to pass it to this widget, and you can make it nullable. So what I'm gonna do is to add them here, like this. Add the field parameters. For the image URL, we can use it here. We can make it nullable. So if it is null, we use the default network image, where we use this one, this link, by using this flag. So what are these two interrogation marks are doing are actually checking if the image URL is null, then we use this one. That's it. So Flutter make it easier for us to do it. Here we use the image height, here we use the image width, and finally we use like this, the box fit. But of course these two can be null also. So now what I'm gonna do is to get the size, and there is a new way actually to get the size. I think they introduced it in the Flutter 3.10. And in here, how you call it is by calling the media query like this, and now you call the size of, and you give it the context. Now if the image height is null, we can call the size dot width, and if this is the case, I want to use the third of the width of my screen. So in order to do that, we just multiply it by 0.3. Let's do the same for the width, but actually I want to give it to 0.2, so only 20% of the width, okay? Now I have it like this, and now I got an error because we have some required parameters in this one here. Here, let's press like this, and we need to add the image URL. Actually, this was the error. Why we need to add it? Because I make it required in here. If I remove the required, we don't have to add it anymore. Okay. However, let's keep it required actually, and I'll comment this like this, and let's remove this because I don't want it to be nullable. Now I'll copy this one, and what I'm gonna do is to create a new file named let's say my app constant .dart. Here let's say my app constant, and now let's say static const string let's say my image URL like this, and actually let's name it movie image, let's say like this. And now I can use this my app constant here in order to give it the image URL. So here let's say my app constant .movie image. Let's add the const keyword, remove this const from here like this, and now let's restart the application. It will have the same look. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. I know I didn't finish it, so and we spent a lot of time on the UI part, but I think this was important to show you. However, in the next step, I'll go a bit faster with the UI part because I believe that you have already the knowledge about the UI, but I want to make sure also that you understand perfectly the structure of the application, because this is the purpose of this course. Then we will introduce the state management and the cleanup process. Thank you for watching. That's it for this lecture. See you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In the last lecture, we started displaying this list view of cached images. Now let's proceed, and what I'm gonna do in here to create this widget, this movies widget actually. So we have here this cached network image in a row with the title, the average rating, the genre is here, and the release date, and finally this button. Now if I press on it, it will take me to the movies detail. Now I want you to think with me about something. We are using this favorite button and this screen. We are also using it in here, and we are also using it in here actually for the same widget. So if you think correctly, it would be much easier for us to make this widget dynamic and use it in all of these widgets. We don't have to create every time the favorite widget for each of them. For example, it will be hard to maintain, and instead if we have some changes, instead of changing in one place only, we will change in multiple places. So when you develop something, you need to see if you are using it in multiple places. You need to think of reusability. Okay, this is something important, and this is something very important for the quality of code and for the time. Okay, so always think about it correctly before that we start coding, and even if you do wrong, don't worry, you can always fix it. Okay, so this is something important. Now again, for the genres also, for example, we are using the same widget that we are using it here for the genres, we are also using it here. Okay, so the same case, we can create a dynamic widget that can be used in here for this widget, and also can be used for the details in here. Okay, so this is something very important to keep in mind to make the code very reusable, and this will make it easier for us. Okay, now to not waste a lot of time on the UI, because the purpose of this course is to teach you the MVVM architecture with different state management, and how to make clear architecture, and how to make the reusability and the code and make your code clean. So I added this widget in here, which I'll explain it for you in details, do not worry. But before that, I continue, and the cached image in here, if you have an error, for example, if we don't have internet connection, for example, and this image URL didn't appear, or if this image URL doesn't work, we have something very useful in here actually that we can use, which is the error widget. For the error widget, you can add any widget that you like, and as you can see, it takes this builder here. Okay, so it actually takes this function that takes the context, a string, which is the error, and an object. I mean the string, the URL, and the error here, okay? So in my case, I'll use an icon like this, and I'm using the icon error. As we agreed, let's add all of them, the icons, let's add it in here, okay? I'll just add it here, error. Now in here I have an error, of course, and now let's use the error icon in here, okay? That's it. Now let's get back, and let's get back actually to our application. And since I added this movies widget, if I restart the application, nothing will change, but this movies widget can be used and the movies screen instead of this cached image. Now I import it, remove this, restart the app, and here's how it looks. It pretty much very the same as this one in here, but we don't have the genres, we don't have the icon button in here, which we will implement it in the next lectures. Let's get back. Now in here, let me explain to you the movies widget. So for the movies widget, I created this a material and then an equal. So when I press on it, as you can see, we have this ripple effect, the splash effect. So this is coming from the equal, and I wrap it with this material and I gave it this card color. So I can give it the colors red, for example, if you prefer. It will look something like this, okay? I also give it the border radius, and I also give it to the equal so that when I press on it, the equal, this splash color, it will take the radius also of the material. Now in here I added it too, because later on when the user press on this, we want to take him to the movie's detail screen. Now starting from this one, as you can see, we have padding from all the sides. So this is why we have this padding here. Then we have a row here. And I wrap it with something called intrinsic width, and this is to avoid the overflow error. Now inside of this row, we have first of all this image, which is, I'm using here the cached image widget that we used previously. And to make it rounded, I wrap it with the clip rect widget, and I gave it border radius of 12. Again, the border radius, you can create, for example, a file and a constant in order to manage all of your padding, your radius, and so on, okay? This could be a really good approach. Then, for this other row, or column actually here, I created this column here, and I wrapped by the expanded widget. This is why I use the intrinsic width to avoid any overflow error, okay? So first of all, we have this title, movie title, I name it here, and here we have this style. I'm using the bold font and the font size. Then I'm adding some spacing here between the title and this widget in here. Then to do this widget, we have here an icon, and then we have the text. So this is the star icon here. Then we have the text, and I added some padding between both of them to make it easier and to wake you up. Here I changed the color, now we have it red in here, okay? Let's continue. Here we have a sized box between these two widgets, but actually later on we need to add the genres widget, okay? So this is why I added this to do in here. Then finally we have this row, which is again straightforward. We have an icon here and a text here. That's it. This here we have an icon, we have the color, I'm using this color, and then we have like this. And of course for the icon we can add it, let's say my app icons. Let's go here Let's add it here like this, and change the name like this. Come back here, use it here like this. I added some padding between these two. Restart the app, and here it is. It looks like this. At the end we have this favorite button. I also commented because, as I said, this is a dynamic widget, so I didn't want to add it directly to not confuse you and to make sure that you understand perfectly. In the next step, next tutorial, we will implement the favorites button. Then afterwards we implement the genres widget. Stay tuned and see you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, let's implement the icon button for the favorites. So for that, we added an icon button in here. Actually, this one, where we use this one in here. This icon, actually, here we create a new file. Let's name it favorite widget or favorite button.dart. In here, let's create a stateless widget, and let's name it favorite button widget like this. Now let's paste this code here like this. Make sure to add the correct parentheses, and we can use it like this. Now let's add in here the outlined one also. So this one, and let's fix the name like this. Now we can use it in the favorite button in here. In here, let's add a to-do, for example, and we can say implement add to favorites, something like this. Later on, here we will manage if the movie is on our favorite or not. We do the management directly here, which will be very straightforward and easy. Okay, we can add the icon size. I like the size of 20 for the icon. I feel that it's suitable more than the default one, which is 24. And for the color, it was red, but I'll just remove it for now. Let's actually just comment it. Okay, now we can use this favorite button widget and the movies widget in here. Let's add the const keyword. Now start the app, and here it is. It looks here like this. That's it. You see, very simple. Later on, if I wanna use it in the movies detail, I just need to copy this widget and put it there. Very straightforward and very easy. That's it for this tutorial. Let's implement in the next tutorial the genres widget. Thank you, and see you on the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, what we are going to do is to implement this genres widget. For that, let's create in the movies folder a new file. Let's name it genres_widget.dart. Now let's create a stateless widget. Let's name it genres widget. Or we can add list here, genres list widget. And let's change actually the name just to make it easier for you to follow. Here I'll name it genres list widget. Okay, now in here I'll use a new widget called wrap. Now this wrap works just like the column or the row. For example, by default it looks just like the row, but if the items it doesn't fit on one line, it will go to the next line. And this is very good in our case actually, because here it doesn't fit on one line, so it goes into the second line. And this looks perfectly like this. Okay, I think this widget, it might be new for most of you, but don't worry, it's just straightforward. It's just the same as the row and the column. So here it takes the children, and you can add as much as you want. If you want, let's say text data here, and if I copy paste it multiple times, save it, and now we can use this widget inside of the movies widget here instead of this to do. import it, add the const keyword, save it. Here it is. Actually, it looks here like this. Now let's make it looks good actually and dynamic, because as you can see in our main application, these actually are coming from the API. So we are doing the JSON serialization, and this is the list, and we are using the correct list in order to display some good UI in here and the correct UI, like this one. So what I'm gonna do first of all is to create a widget here. You can create a stateless widget if you want, but I wanna show you all the way. So this is a widget function, and what I wanna name it, I will name it ship. In here, actually, you could use something called ship in here. This ship, it takes a label, and this label, it takes a widget, like this. Now, if I copy this one, and let's paste it instead of this, and let's comment this one, save, and come back to our application, I just want to show you how it looks. So this is the ship widget. And if you do some customization to it, you might reach the same UI as we did. And this is easy code actually. But you can also use a container if you want. So I'll just name it here ship widget, like this. And in here I have an error because I didn't return anything. In my case, I want to return a container actually. And to not waste time on this UI, I'll just copy and explain each line of code. So I'll paste it here. Here I added the ship widget, like this. So I gave it two parameters. The first one is the genre's name. The second one is the context. Now, if I remove the context, I have an error here and the places where I used it. However, if I'm using a stateful widget, I will have access to the context. As you can see, the errors disappeared from here. This is important to know because in some cases you might find yourself in a need of this. So the context, if you want to reach it in here and the outside of the state class in here, you can have access to it. So this is why I don't have an error in here if I'm using stateful widget. We have access to the context. Okay, then in my case, you will see later on in the code, we will not use a stateful widget. In the whole application, we will do something without using stateful widget. You will see that we don't really need to use it. Only, of course, in the set state management, which is a bad state management, but sometimes you really might need it. You will see later on as a course. But you will see how we managed everything. Now in here I added some padding. First of all, let me show you how it looks and then I'll explain to you what I did in here. So what I'm gonna do is, instead of these, let's add the ship widget, give it the context, and give it the genre name. Let's say horror, for example. Let's remove this because it's not constant anymore. And let's add it multiple times. Let's save it. And now it looks just as we did in the other application, and the main application, just like this one. Perfect. Now I don't want to type this one just like this, of course. So what I'm gonna do is to go to my app constant. I'll just create a random list that we will not use it later on in our application. This is just to show you something now. Let's say static const and list of strings. Let's say genres, and let's say horror, action, thriller, drama, and that's it. Now we can use this list. You will see how and why. Let's come back to the genres list and let's copy this one, remove all of these, remove this one too. And for the children, instead of the list like this, let's generate the list based on the list I just created. Now, in order to generate the widgets or the list, what we can do is to call something called list.generate, like this, and we need the length. The length, we need to use the app constant journeys that we just created, and here we need to add the generator. So if I hover on this one, here it takes widget and it takes function and generator. I know it's not clear for you, so what we can do here is to give it an index, and here we return something like this, and in our case we need to return the ship widget like this. We need to give it the churn name, so we can copy this. Here we give it the index because we have access to the index. Here we need to give it the context. We're giving it here like this. Now if I restart the app, as you can see, we have horror, action, thriller, drama, like this. I typed this in a wrong way. Now if I save it, as you can see, it got it changed directly. So as you can see, we are showing correctly the genres here. Anyways, later on in the course, when I explain the UI section, we don't have the genres like this. We have just numbers, and then from the numbers, we need to convert it to text. Don't worry about it, I'll explain it later on, and this is why I told you previously, I'll explain later on how we can use and how can we benefit from the utils file. We can even create some extensions if you know what is it, but don't worry about it. Now let's come back to the movies widget and go to the journeys list widget, and now let me explain this ship widget to you. Now here we have this container, and you might imagine that this container, it has this background color, which is the surface color. Of course it's rounded. I gave it 30 for the rounded border, and I gave it the surface color but with opacity of 2, and I gave it a border. Actually it doesn't really look too much, but if I change this color, for example, to red, it will look like this, okay? But I'll just keep it like this. And then we have the text, and of course I wrap it with some padding here in order to make it look better. So if I remove the padding, it doesn't look great at all. I'll save it. As you can see, it looks like this. So no, it's better to keep the padding, okay? And for the genre name, I did some styling for it. I gave it the color, the on-surface color. We don't really have to add it, but I'll just keep it because this can be managed automatically from the app theme. As you remember, for the theme data, we are using the theme.dark, and all of these colors are managed automatically from the theme dark. But if you want to change it, this is why we added the copy with. Okay, so I think this should be clear enough for you. If you didn't understand anything, first of all, I strongly recommend you to watch the course, the lecture again, and then download the attached source code. And if you're still struggling, feel free to ask. I'll try my best to help you, and that's it. I hope that you're enjoying the course a lot. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, let's implement the favorites page. So when I press on this button, we need to navigate to the favorite page. Now, I will not implement the navigation now. First, let's implement the favorite page, and then we implement the movies details page. Let's have a look on how it is actually. So here we have the favorite page, and if I delete all of them, here we display something, no favorites has been added, for example. Then in the next tutorial, we implement this page here. Okay. Now to implement this page, as you might notice, it is very similar to the movies screen. So here I can copy all of this, create a new file in here, and let's name it favorites underscore screen. .dart like this, paste this in here, and now change the name. Let's name it favorites screen, just like this. Now let's say here favorite movies, and let's make this capital. And now let's change this button to delete button. We didn't add it yet, so let's add it here like this. Let's say delete like this, and now the error is gone. Let's remove this from here. And what I'm gonna do in order to see the changes, let's go to the main, and I'll just comment this out and then add our new screen right here. Let's see how it looks. Let's restart the application. Now here it is. It looks just as the movies screen, but here we have different title, and here's the button is different. Okay, so I'll keep this like this for now, and I actually feel that there are a lot of spacing. So what I'm gonna do is to remove this widget, to remove this padding. Let's save this one. Now it looks better, and let's remove it also from the movies screen, just like this. Now save it, and that's it. Before that I finish, you know what, I'll actually keep it like this, and in the next tutorial we implement the movies details. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Hi everyone, and welcome to this lecture. So in this lecture we will implement the movie details screen. For that I added the UI code, and I'll just explain it to you. Let's see how it looks previously in our application. So here it is. Here we have this back button, then we have this cached image, the widget that we created previously. Here we have this button, which we already created also, but you see it is rounded here actually. It is in the center and top here. So this might be a bit complicated for you to implement, but don't worry, I'll explain it to you. Then here we have the title, the rating, the release date, then that genre's list, and here finally we have the description of the movie. Now let's get back to our application, and then let's make this screen as the main screen here. So let's say let's actually add it like this, import it, add the const keyword, restart the app, and here's how it looks. Now the image background is kind of white, but here you can see the edges of the button. Okay, now let's go to this screen and let me explain it to you. So as you may notice, this is a stack. So let's actually do 200 here, and now if I scroll it like this, as you can see, it will be scrollable like this on top of the image. So this is why I'm using stack. So this is the first stack is used for this purpose. Okay. Now the first child of this stack is actually our cached network image, and we need to give it a height. The height that I choose is this height actually. And here actually, instead of using the size like this, the old way, as I showed you last time, it would be better if we initialize it as I showed you, which is more optimized. So what I'm gonna do is to define a size here. Let's put it equal to media query dot size of, and then give it the context, and that's it. Now instead of this, replace it in our application just like this. Okay, so I wanted to show it to you again because I want you to use this method because it's much more optimized and better. Okay, now the first child, as I said, this is the image. If you change the height, for example, put 8. Now as you can see, it is different. If I try to scroll a bit down, it is taller now, let's say. So it takes more spaces, but let's keep it this height. I really like it. Now, in order to place this widget here down this much, I mean this to have this margin from the top, this is why I added this sized box in here. Okay, so if for example I added child and let's say container, and let's say the color of this container is red, save. Now here it is, as you can see. Okay, so it arrives until the top edges of this button. Perfect. So I hope that this is clear for you. And you know what, I'll actually keep it like this and I'll comment this for you so you have a look if you want to play with it. Then we have another stack, and this other stack is for these two widgets. So this heart button, the favorite button, and this one in here. So first material here is actually for this lower widget, and the favorite button is at the bottom. So in here it is very straightforward. We have the title. So as you can see in a column we have the title and so on, and I added the material here in order to give it the border radius. So if you want to change this border radius to 200, it will be like this and so on. So this is why I added this material. You can wrap it in a different widget like clip rect or container and give it the border radius as you wish. Now I defined this column, and as I said, we have the movie text, then we have a row in order to add this rating and then the release date, which is here. This is very straightforward. Then we have our genres list in here. So this is why I added. Then I have the text for the overview, and I multiply it by 200 in order to display it like this for us. And I use this styling for the text to justify the text and make it look even better. Now, in order to show this button in the center, what I did is to add the align widget and use it and put it to the center. If you want to also control it as what you want, you can use the positioned widget and the stack, but it's not really needed. Now here, if you change the container color, if I put red, now this is the container color, as you can see. So this is why I wrap it with this container, and then I added some padding for our favorite button, which is here. Okay, so I hope that this is clear for you. I know it might be a bit fast for the UI, so I hope that this was clear for you. If you have any doubt or any question, please feel free to ask. But everything here is very straightforward. This is just UI. And if you are new to Flutter, what I recommend you to do is to take the source code, try to change it as what you like, try to change and play around with the code, change the color, add some padding, add some other widgets, play with it to make sure that you understand. Okay? And you will find the code attached to this lecture and to every lecture. I try to add the source code as a zip file to every lecture. Okay? I know I talked a lot. This was for this tutorial, and thank you for watching again, and see you in the next one. Now let's proceed with our UI, and you might be wondering what's left. What's left is actually to do the splash screen. So this application, once I open it, if you remember, we have this loader, then we navigate to this screen. And if we have an error, we need to show the error on the splash screen. For example, if we have an error while we are loading the data. In our case, we need to load two things. The first thing is the favorites. We need to know what's the user favorite. Then we load the genres for the movies. This is important because the API, it gives us numbers as the genres for each movie, and you will see later on in the API section. And then we need to map it. We need to do another request to get the genres, and then we need to convert. For example, let's say 1 is action, comedy is 2, for example, and so on. So we need to handle this by ourselves, and don't worry, I'll explain this in details for you. So this is why we need now to implement the error widget. It's actually very straightforward. So what I'm gonna do inside of the widget folder, because this is a global widget. So let's say on my error widget, like this. Here we can create a stateless widget. We can name it my error widget, like this. Now in here, I'll put it in the center, then use as a child a column in order to display the error text and error try button. That's it. So first of all, we can actually also show an icon, something like icons.error, like this. And if you want to add it to my app icon, which is a better approach, let's add it. Here it is. I added to we have it here. We already added actually. Okay, perfect. Yes, we already added because we used it in the cached network image and in here. Okay, perfect. Now let's proceed. Let's format our code first. Let's add the constant keyword, and actually let's add in here two things. We need the function and we need the error text. So in order to add the text here, we can add it like this. Let's name it error text to make it clearer. Then we need to add a function or void callback. In my case, I'll name it retry function, like this. Then these are required parameters for this widget. Okay, now let's add the sized box. I'll use sized box of height 20. Then let's add the text for the error, and we can put it in red and so on. I'll just add it here, and here I have an error because this is not constant anymore. So let's add the constant keyword here. And finally, we need to add the elevated button or text button as you wish. So I added some height in here, margin, let's say, and then we need to add the elevated button in here. So we need to give it the function. In my case, I name it retry function, like this. These two parentheses are very important. If you don't add it, it won't work. But normally it doesn't give you an error if you don't add it. But please make sure to add them, because if you don't do this, you'll get an error. Okay, so that's it for the error widget. Let's now also create the splash screen. As I mentioned, we need to load some data, as I mentioned previously. So let's say splash screen .dart, and in here let's create a stateless widget. Let's name it splash screen, like this, and let's add a scaffold here. And for the body, for now, I'll just use the error widget. And actually, you see when I tapped error widget, this is a built-in widget, and in Flutter it takes an object exception. But in our case, I name it my error widget. And as you can see, we have the errors because we need to give it the function and the error text. Let's say error text here, and now let's give it an empty function, like this. And now let's make this one as our main screen. Just like this, import it, add the const keyword, start our application, and go back to our application, of course. And here it is. Great. Now we can add, actually, here we can put it in the center if we want. And we can add here main cross alignment, put it to the center, same for the cross to make sure. And if it doesn't work, we just need to wrap it by the center, and this is why I did here. So this is the icon in here. It would be nice actually if we choose, for example, size of 50 and the color is to red, like this. I think it looks much better. And for this retry button, if you want to change it, you can change it as what you wish. Okay, I think it looks great like this. And I'll just stop here this tutorial. Later on, of course, this screen will contain some different UI, which I'll introduce later on. We will use something like Future Builder, some other things like Async Notifier, which you will see later on in the state management sections for different approaches. Okay, so stay tuned. I think we're done with the UI. In the next section, we will talk about the navigation, but now using the MVVM. Okay, we will compare the normal navigation, and in a normal application actually. Then we will use the MVVM architecture in order to navigate and make it clean way in order to navigate, show dialogues, show snack bars, for example. So stay tuned and see you in the next lecture.